Okay, that's good. Just waiting for the preview to start doing its preview. Come on. There we go. Okay, and then I just gotta hit this. Do that. Don't want to do that. And pop out the chat. And I think everything is finally in order, nearly, and there we go. All right. Hope everyone's doing well today. Let's see, we've got Queens, New York, Cornwall, Germany, Flint, Michigan, Toronto, France, Quebec, the nether regions. Let's see here. Safe in Florida. Let's see. Morning from wet and windy Milwaukee. Yeah, it's pretty wet and windy here as well. It's pretty dark out. Edinburgh, Louisville, California, Gothenburg. Let's see here. What else? Australia, Netherlands, Land of Lincoln, Denver, Yorkshire, Spain, Portugal, Canada, Nottingham, Netherlands, Odessa, Texas, Manchester, Nicaragua. Fortunately, moved his sister's car to a commercial building, parking above ground, and was saved. Yeah, it's flooded car is no fun. Dubai, Toronto, Duluth. Let's see here. Still getting thunderstorms in southwest Australia. It's meant to be summer down here. Go figure. Yeah. Well, sometimes it rains in the summer. At least I don't know. At least it does here. I don't know. I guess I don't know about Australia. North Essex, Slovenia, Australia. Another Slovenia. Is that more gray hair than last time? Hopefully not politics reduced or induced stress. I mean, no, it's probably the same amount of gray hair as usual. I mean, maybe a little bit more. It's hard to say. I don't keep track, like, specifically. Hello from Northern Italy, Romanian in London. We've got Manitoba, Rock Springs, Bulls Gap, Alberta, Stockholm, Corpus Christi, Hull, Stockholm, Hudson, Wisconsin, Canton, Georgia. Let's see. North Carolina, drying out after 4 days of rain. Yeah, we've had rain for at least a day and a half at this point. Beaverton, Oregon. Let's see. Is it nice anywhere? Well, probably someplace like, Fiji and stuff like that. It's probably lovely. Southern Thailand. Might be nice there. Being a parent gives gray hair. And I'm not a parent, so I should be fine. But, I mean, I do have 4 cats, I guess. There's that. Good morning from New York City. Hope you're having a great morning. Let's see here. La Nina here in Australia. So storms in the summer is on the cards. We've had El Nino. I don't know if we've had La Nina. Maybe. I don't know if we get either of those things too much over here in Wisconsin. That's more of a West Coast kind of a thing, I think, for us. Stay away from social networking, news, politics. It'll just make you sad and angry no matter which side you're on. Yeah, I mean, I've been staying away from Facebook a lot. Like, I'm still posting things in there that are related to the channel, but as far as like going through Facebook to see what friends and family and stuff like that are doing and see some of the groups and things like that, I generally I've been doing it maybe once a week, and even then I'm spinning through as quick as possible. I'm just not particularly interested. Good morning, fam. How you doing, Emily? We got Rockford, Illinois. Hudson, Illinois. One cat can give you gray. Well, potentially, yeah. But they're doing okay. Even Diesel, he's doing okay. A bit snotty. Everything okay, Uncle Adam? I got allergies. I'm always in the spring and the fall a bit plugged up. So yeah, it is definitely an allergies thing. But yeah, it's one of those things that. And it's mostly mornings, too. Not always, but generally it's mornings, and it's spring and fall. Warhammer 40,000 / mini painting has helped me find my inner peace. Well, that's good. Therapist recommended I find something social to do, so I can honestly say I'm hobbying under professional psychiatric advice. That's nice. That's like prescription hobby, and I think that's a good idea. I think that honestly, I mean, to be fair, this is one of the things that I try to stress to some degree in the channel in general, is that I think that this hobby, sitting down and building and painting and all that kind of stuff, and the gaming as well, but especially the building and painting, because you can do it by yourself at any time. You don't have to coordinate with somebody else directly to do it. I think it's a great hobby, and it doesn't have to be this hobby. It could be scale modeling. It could be maybe you're into drawing. Maybe, it's something where you're kind of focused and you're working with your hands, and generally maybe a little bit there's a little bit of solitude in that, to some degree. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing it in groups. Nothing wrong with sitting down and hobbying in groups. Some people like that. I have a tendency to generally prefer to hobby, by myself. But nonetheless, I think that it's a meditative kind of thing, almost stress relieving for me, certainly. So that's one of the things I try to push with the channel, and to let people know that they should try to find a hobby that's something like that, and not just watching TV and, scanning the news and doom scrolling and stuff like that. So, yeah. Hi from France. Never managed to find a paint scheme for my Tyranids. I'm curious to see what you've come up with. Well, they're not, certainly done yet. I'm going to start painting them on Twitch maybe as soon as this upcoming Friday. So, I'm going to probably... I know I'm going to work on the Spooky Boys, the Night Haunts, this upcoming Monday, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow night. I'll be working on them. Hey, moderator Matt, how you doing? My allergies are also annoying today. Yeah, that's no fun. Yeah, so I'll be doing that Monday night. I'll be finishing up the Night Haunts, and I should be finishing them. And then probably Friday I will start working on the Tyranids. But then I've got a special stream on Saturday morning that I'm doing. I'm working with the folks from Board Game Geek, big website all about board games and stuff like that. They're running a virtual convention again, and so I'll be on my normal Twitch channel, which, if you're looking, it's right here, twitch.tv/tabletop minions. But I think it's going to be 9 a.m. to noon Central Time on Saturday morning, and I'm going to be painting some... I've never done chibi before, but I'm going to be doing some... I think the game's called Marvel Champions. It just showed up yesterday. The folks from Board Game Geek sent me a copy. I think it's called Marvel Champions. It's from Cool Mini or Not, and it's got little chibi, the Hulk and Iron Man and junk like that in there and stuff. So I'm going to be painting those for about 3 hours, and it'll be interesting because, like I said, I've never done chibi before. So for those who don't know, chibi are like basically it's when they get the really big heads and they're kind of cartoony. You know what I mean? There's probably more to it than that, but that's just when I hear the word chibi, that's what I think, is giant heads and cartoony looking. So, Chad says, I like to hobby and listen to this. Reminds me of painting with friends in college. That's nice. Yeah, absolutely. And that's also a big point of doing this, every 2 weeks as well, is that I know a lot of people like to listen to it kind of like a podcast, which is great. So that works out. Hello from Cancun, Mexico. It's probably nice there, too. I'm sure it's not raining and stuff like that too much. John says, we had our Gaslands game last night, full of carnage and lots of blowing up, sadly. I lost but won. Too much fun. Well, that's cool. Yeah, where did I just find that? There is a car around here. No, I don't know what I did with it. But anyway, it's like an El Camino. Oh, here it is. Yeah, it's like an El Camino, but you can kind of see it's got like jet engines. Here, it's got jet engines back there. So all I got to do is just put some guns on it and paint it up, and I think it'll look kind of cool. Make it look a little Mad Maxy is the plan. So yeah. Let's see here. Y'all want to hear a wild story? I won an entire Imperial Guard army for $40 from my friendly local game store. 10 Lehman Russ tanks, 200 infantry, bunch of heavy weapons. It was like a raffle kind of thing. That's kind of cool. Nice. Adam, once again, your videos have helped me immensely through Hobby Time. I've been watching them all from the oldest, and all that documented info still holds true today. Well, I do try to make the Number one, I try to keep the videos to be sort of evergreen so that people can watch them years later. That's why I don't generally talk too much about like news, like gaming news. I might talk about a new product sometimes and things like that, but I try to make it so that the things, you know, they still hold true, hopefully down the road. You know, the things I'm talking about this new product from time to time. Like, but it's not that often that I talk about new products. Number two, I'm sorry that you watched a whole bunch of the old videos because the quality wasn't as good. I don't think I was as good, but I appreciate you doing that. So yeah, I hope that they help people. My Maggot Crown Ogre came the other day in the mail. Nice. That's a fun model. I really enjoy it. Happy Sunday to you all from very grey Scotland. Today, instead of working on a massive pile of unfinished minis, I'm painting an old Hero Quest mummy that I found at the bottom of my bits box. It's always important to, like, kind of, and this, I hate this term, but follow your bliss. Like, if you're sort of stuck, or if you're just like, you know, but if you find a piece that you're like, oh, I can't wait, it's sometimes better to maybe put the thing you're working on hold and work on this one thing just to really, like, spark your imagination, spark your creativity, whatever, and then you can always go back to the other stuff. It's not going to go anywhere particularly. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. Recently got into Star Wars Legion, having tons of fun. Love the alternating activation aspect. Yeah, I like the activation quite a bit. I also like that bidding with the cards at the beginning to kind of figure out how things are going to go. I think that part of the game specifically, the game is well done in general, but that part specifically with the cards and the bidding and the activation, I think I do dig that quite a bit. Have the new Catalyst models reignited any love in you for the Tabletop series? Catalyst models. I don't think... Oh, that must be something about Battletech, I guess. I haven't seen any new models. I mean, I'm sure they're out. I just haven't seen them. Finally pulled me into Kill Team. Starting my first Kill Team list today. It's Imperial Guard. Nice. I've got an Imperial Guard list. Or a bunch of... You know, I've got a... I guess... I think I've only got just one list painted. If I add more guys, then I can paint and, you know, do more, but I don't know. Honestly, with Imperial Guard, I probably don't see myself building another Imperial Guard list until they come out with new Cadians or something, you know, or something along those lines. I could see that. Yeah. Let's see here. Speaking of listening to this like a podcast, I've been listening to your back catalog of the Every Other Sunday show from before I joined the channel. I'm about 40 hours down and probably 40 more to go. Well, see, that's... If you're doing it while you're hobbying and stuff like that, like, I love to hobby and listen to something. Some people like to have like a TV on or watch a movie or something like that. Some people like music, but I like to be either listening to a podcast or an audiobook when I'm hobbying, and I really enjoy it. Did you look at the book Roman Lapat is putting out? I haven't. I've heard that he's putting out a book, but I don't know anything about it. I know he's a high-end painter. I have never met him. I'm 98% sure I've seen him, like, at a show, whether it was Adepticon or Nova. But I've never, like, interacted with him. But yeah, I think we've been in the same building at the very least. My painting has improved so much since I started using the wet palette you suggested. I've upgraded to the Army Painter one. Still an amazing tool. Yeah, wet palette is really... I have a hard time painting without it. It's really, really, I think, a great thing for helping your paint. And you just waste less paint, generally, as well. Hey, Adam, I bought the Zona Alpha PDF this morning after watching your video on leaders and followers. Any recommendations for models, and do you have a sales pitch for getting people into the game? I mean, I think some of the best models you can get, frankly, for that game are probably going to be from a company called Anvil Industry. It's not Industries, but it's Anvil Industry. They're from the UK, so... it may take a while to get them to you, depending on where you are. Like, I know right now, the UK to US mail is a little slower than usual. Although I did just get a book recently that I ordered from the UK that I didn't expect to get for another couple weeks, and it showed up on Friday or Saturday. So, but yeah, Anvil Industry, take a look at them. They're from the UK, and they've got a lot of great, like, kind of like modern military or operatives or, what do you call them, contractors, you know. But they've also got cultists and stuff like that, which you can also use in Zona Alpha. I would say with Zona Alpha, the thing that's interesting is that, for one thing, it's not all about just trying to destroy the other group. It's about kind of... It can be a little co-op, actually. even if it doesn't mean to be, but you can kind of play it that way to some degree. So that's also nice if you've got friends who like I know people who are like, I don't like to play adversarial games because then somebody gets their nose out of joint. You know what I mean? If they lose. And if you play a competitive, or sorry, a cooperative game, then it becomes, it's us versus the game, which in many situations there are fewer noses out of joint then. So yeah, that's something to look at too. What are you working on, Uncle Adam? Well, right now I've got still the night haunts that I'm doing on Twitch. I have some extra night haunts that I'm doing that are not going to be on Twitch because they're going to be a real super simple paint job, but I have to texture their bases today so I can get them primed soon. And they're just 3 spirit hosts, I think, from the Night Haunt army that I bought on eBay because they were already built. Spirit hosts are kind of fiddly to build, and so I just happened to be on eBay looking at some stuff, and I came across spirit hosts, and I was like, oh, these are already built, and so I'll just buy them that way. And it was a pretty decent price. So I got them, and I had to scrape some mold lines and some stuff like that, and there was one glue join that I had to re-glue and stuff like that. But yeah, they're basically ready to go. I just need to, like I said, texture their bases and then prime them. So I'm working on that. And then, like I said, I'm also working on some Anvil Industry models for Zona Alpha. I think I've got my cultist list almost built. And then I'm going to move to, I think, a trader list. And by trader, I don't mean traitor, like that, but trader, like I trade things back and forth. These are people who are going into, the exclusion zone to get cool baubles and the stuff and then take them out and sell them and try to make money. I mean, everyone's doing that to some degree, but there's a faction in the game that are just known as traders, and that's like all they do. But there's also soldiers. Like technically, I think the soldiers, the actual military, are not looking for, well, they must probably still be doing it, but they're probably not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for the government. Finally got my Indominus box. Sad to help, I run out of storage space. Well, yeah, it has a big box. That's very true. Was really into painting this model. Now I have to wait for wash to dry. That's why I always paint multiple models at once. Even if they're not from the same game or the same whatever, I almost never paint one model at a time. If it is a really big model, then I will sometimes work on just one big model at a time because you could be like, okay, I had to put wash on all the skin. Now I'm going to work on the legs, which are way down here, or on the pants or the boots or whatever. If like it's a big, like a giant or a big robot or something like that. But for smaller models, yeah, you can. If you're painting just one model at a time, sometimes you're stuck because you're like, well, I put wash on this model, and then now I got to wait for the wash to dry. And wash can take a long time to dry, especially if you put it on thick, which I do frequently do myself. Need a final decision because I can't make up my mind. Should I buy the Sisters of Battle Army box? I found some last forgotten box in my shop and it's expensive. But, I mean, if you want Sisters of Battle Army, and if you want the Codex, although the new Codex will come out probably sometime in 2021, but whatever. That's still a ways away to some degree. I mean, not the beginning part of it, but, I think it's not a bad deal, and it's got some nice models in it. And if it's not too expensive, it might not be a bad idea. Regarding the not as polished quality of your early videos, I think that was one of the things that helped me grow in the hobby, where if they had been looked pro, I might have felt intimidated. Yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, at the time when I started, I was still focusing a little bit more on audio. I had like a $25 microphone that I got from, I don't know, Amazon or something like that. There's a little lapel mic that you clipped on your shirt, but it still sounded better than most of the people who were filming at the time and they were using the microphone that's built into the camera, and those are not great. So at least I sounded a little better, but there was still like a bit of a hum sometimes because it was an inexpensive, mic and stuff like that. And lighting was maybe a little flat sometimes and things like that. But yeah, it's. I think I shot everything in 720p originally too, so things are going to look a little less sharp. But yeah, it was. It's fun. So, and they still, the information still holds up well enough at least. I'm in the U.S. and want to search and find some random minis to be printed and shipped to me. What are a few places to get them printed? I hear so many I get overwhelmed. I mean, if you do, there's a website. There's a friend of mine who from work, and he has a website where he's been printing with resin printer. And his name is Matt. If you listen to the Game 4 podcast, it's Matt from the Game 4 podcast. If you just type in www.gaming-matter, M-A-T-T-R, there's no E there, gamingmatter.com, and he's got a website, and you could reach out to him from there and get a quote and stuff like that. And he prints out stuff. He printed out some stuff for me recently. It looks good. He does good work. But yeah, he's been doing that kind of stuff. Otherwise, another friend of the show, Mac the Maker, M-A-C-K, Mac the Maker. He's in it's Blake. I got me. Arizona. I want to say Arkansas. I'm like, no, I know it starts with an A, but it's not Arkansas. Arizona. And he also does that kind of stuff as well. So those are both people that I know personally and who do good work. So I don't know. You can give that a try. Just do a Google search for Mac the Baker. I don't know what his exact email or his exact URL is, but yeah, the other one is Gaming Matter. So it's GAMINGMATTR, no E in there, .com. I really liked the video on leaders and followers. Do you feel that YouTubers covering GW to please the algorithm deserve the small miniatures companies? Do you feel that the YouTubers covering GW to please the algorithm deserve the small miniatures companies? I'm not sure what that means exactly. Deserve. I mean, I don't really... When I do cover GW, it's either something I'm interested in. I don't know it's the algorithm per se. It's more the fact that I think people... It's a more popular brand, so more people watch it. I don't know that it has to actually... Because there's certain things that people do for the algorithm that are, but I don't know that just covering something that's popular necessarily makes the algorithm go, oh yeah, we know that GW is popular. The algorithm, I don't think, knows that. I could be wrong, though. But that being said, when I cover stuff from them, very frequently it's because they're the biggest in the industry. They're the 800-pound gorilla. Like about a year and a half ago, oh gosh, maybe more than that, when Apocalypse came out, I was like, there's no reason for me to cover Apocalypse on my channel because my channel's aimed towards people who are, for the most part, to some degree, getting into the hobby. And Apocalypse is for people who generally are for people who've been in the hobby for a while because you have a lot of models. But then I had a friend of mine who was a beginner say, so do I need to get this Apocalypse thing that's coming out or not? And then I thought, well, if I don't talk about it, then some of the new people might. So I literally made a video that I was like, this is what it is. If you're new, don't bother. If you've been playing for a long time and you want to play big games, great. You know what I mean? And it was more of an idea of like, I'm talking about this to inform a little bit. Partially, honestly, to kind of wave off the newbies because, yeah, when Apocalypse was first started, it was for people who were like, I've got all these models, but I can only play games that are like 2,000 points, And then someone finally from GW was like, well, if we made a set of rules you could play with 5,000 points, would you like that? And they were like, sure. And then, that's probably not the exact conversation, but it's pretty close. Do you think the technological and process progression seen in your earlier videos to the ones now is rather inspiring for videographers? Oh, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's been doing it for a while, so I've been doing this and I've learned, I hope. So that's also a benefit too. Morning, Adam. Speaking of Game 4, what's the future? Love using it to find stores in new areas. Well, we're still, we still have plans to take it out of hibernation when the time comes and to bring it back. Obviously, things are not trending down right now as far as the virus is concerned. So we're still kind of waiting on that. Like I said in the past, it's not like that's not the company. When I say that, I mean that like Game 4 is not the entire company that I work for. Like Milk Can, the company that I work for, and that Matt is a partial owner of Game 4 Matt that I was talking about earlier. We make software and websites and apps and junk like that for all kinds of different companies and things like that. And thankfully, very thankfully, knock on wood, we've been busy. So that's been good because the economy is all squirrely and stuff like that. So we've been busy, which is good. But we're keeping an eye on the industry as far as that's concerned. Some of the work that we've been doing has actually been in the tabletop gaming industry. We've been doing some website stuff for a couple of different board game companies now. And that's through contacts that we've made at different trade shows and things like that, and just because of Game 4. So we want to bring it back. When we bring it back, we're pretty sure it's going to be all web-based instead of being an app, just because dealing with Google and Apple for the two different big major app stores right now is becoming more and more troublesome. You're seeing the court battles between Epic and Apple and Microsoft stepping in and all this jazz and blah, blah, blah. So it's just everything's faster and easier if we do it web-based, but we still want to do it mobile first so it works great on the phone even though it's web-based. So anyway, that's where that's going to probably go eventually once we hopefully get things where we can start playing in person again and doing that kind of stuff. So it's still, you know, we're still looking at it. Hi, Adam. Do you know about the game Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings? And if so, what do you think about it? Yes, I am familiar with it. I own some of the models here and there, not a ton, but I do own some. I've talked with some of the people from the company at trade shows and things like that. The models are cool. They're a little soft in the detail area. Like they don't come to sharp points and things like that, but they're nicely done sculpt-wise. They're just not like as sharp as like GW, Malifaux, some of those types of models. There's a lot of cost in making molds that can make such sharp models. So that's why sometimes you see models that are a little bit softer detail. They're not soft, like they're not made of soft plastic. They just don't come to like, it's much less likely that you're going to poke yourself trying to build them and glue them together than let's say a bunch of Chaos Space Marines, right? As far as the game is concerned, I'm not a big fan of rank and flank where you're moving your units like in a rectangle and stuff like that. I just don't like that game style. But I think the models are interesting. And I've heard that there's going to be a skirmish version of the game which will not be rank and flank, which is nice because the way they designed that game is that the models come on round bases, but then they go in these trays and they have little slots for them, so you're not having to glue them into square bases or glue them into the big rectangles, and then later on they go in the skirmish game and you're like, well, I've glued all these guys down, now what do I do? So that was smart, I think. But yeah, otherwise I don't know a ton about it other than that. I'm vaguely familiar with some of the factions a little bit, and like I said, I own some of the models, but not too many. So I'm 43 and I have been away for close to 20 years. I'm back now and really enjoy the new models, YouTube such as you, Black Magic Craft, Goobertown, Squidmar. Nice. Yeah, it's very, like when I first started too, there was no, like you ended up buying books and magazines to learn how to build terrain and how to paint models and stuff like that. And now there are so many different things you can go online to read and to watch and things to be able to paint and to build and learn about strategy and all kinds of things like that. It's really a great time for the overall industry, in my opinion. Doing a video on something GW doesn't mean instant success. I've tested it, says David. Sometimes the right video on lesser known content is the key, sometimes not. I mean, there is something to be said if you, like, I've seen channels before that will focus on one specific kind of indie game, and then, you know, it's just not something that everybody's interested in. I know a guy who lives here in Wisconsin. He, I think the name of his channel, he's changed it a couple of times now. I think it's called Raj Rules, and he talks mostly about Saga. He does a video, I think, every Thursday, which he calls Saga Thursday, and he's a super nice guy, and he does these videos about Saga. And amongst the Saga folks, I think they're very well received. But if you don't play Saga, you don't generally pay attention. You know what I mean? Like, just like if I talk about some other game specifically and you don't play it, or if I talk about a paint technique that you don't use, like if I talk a bunch about airbrush and you don't want an airbrush, you're not interested in airbrush, and you don't currently airbrush, then you're probably not going to watch a video about airbrush. I have found with a bunch of the tutorial videos that I do, if I do a tutorial video, they have a tendency to not get as many views up front, but they have a longer tail. Let me just take a drink here and I'll explain that. So the idea basically is that you have velocity, where when a video goes live, it immediately gets a whole bunch of views. And the more views it gets, the more quickly, the higher the velocity. And there's something to do with the algorithm and how it gets placed that can then cause that to accelerate even more. Like the videos that I've done with Sam in the past don't frequently have a high velocity. And the reason for that is because if he's telling you how to paint a power sword, if you are not currently planning on doing any power sword painting, you're not going to necessarily be as enthused to watch the video. Some people just love to watch the video because they watch every video. Some people are like, oh, I love to watch Sam because he's great. You know, or I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about a power sword maybe later on, so I'll just watch this to get some ideas. But there are other people who are like, cool, power sword. Not gonna do any of those, so they just don't watch. Whereas if I do a video that is something about like motivation or that kind of stuff, everybody feels like they're not motivated enough. So they have a tendency, frankly, to do a little bit better velocity-wise. Now, that being said, the Sam videos do well in the long run because later on you want to paint this power sword, you're going to come back to YouTube and type in how to paint power sword and then find Sam's video, and then boom, you watch it. And so that video might be 5-6 years old, let's say, but it's still getting views because people are still looking for that information. So it's just kind of I don't want to say a juggle, but it is a little bit like you have to understand sometimes, and very frequently, and I still don't understand this. I've been doing this nearly 8 years. There will be times where I'll be like, I'll get done with a video and I'm like, yeah, that wasn't great. I don't think it worked out well. And then that video will do spectacularly. Almost all the time. Not almost. Well, very frequently, I'll be like, I don't know if I think that I screwed that up. I think I did. I probably should have re-recorded it. I should have said, because when I'm doing my videos, I'm doing basically the thing I'm doing right here. I'm just basically talking. I rarely ever have any notes. I'm just talking. I know what I'm going to talk about, but I don't have a script. I don't have a teleprompter or anything like that. I'm just yammering away. And so sometimes I'll have a really good idea like in the shower in the morning, and then later on in the day when I film it, I'll forget that thing I was going to say or whatever. So there are times when I'm just like, yeah, this video is it's not my best work, and it will do spectacularly. And then there's other times where I'm like, I am really proud of this video. I think I've really knocked it out of the park, and it won't do that well. So I guess that's just life. But it's interesting the way that it works. Just released a new micro game. Now I'm going to sit and paint some scenery while I watch. Oh, hey, Nick Evans, how you doing? Yeah, you released the new Tiny Sorcerers? I think I saw something about that, yeah. Nick Evans makes a game that I've talked about multiple times on the channel. It's called Planet 28, and you should definitely check it out on places that it might be. I think Mammoth Miniatures is the website, and also you can get it on DriveThruRPG/RPG Now. No, well, probably, but also Wargames Vault. Is that right? Is it Wargames Vault? I think it's Wargames Vault. Anyway, but yeah, I'd enjoy Planet 28 quite a bit. Serendipity on the title this week. Just finished painting an original Space Hulk board game. Oh, yeah. I guess, okay, so technically, I'd said it a couple times, I've never painted Tyranids before. Now that you mentioned Space Hulk, I did paint some old school first edition Gene Stealers that were in, and by I say first edition, I mean first edition Space Hulk, not first edition 40K. First edition Space Hulk miniatures for a friend of mine, geez, I don't know, almost 10 years ago. And it was literally just, I primed them, I showed him how to use wash. He went in and painted all the spiky bits, and I think maybe I did the eyes, and that was about it. So there, yeah. But that's so I guess technically I did those. My plan here. Let me grab some of these folks from the box. So currently my Tyranids, which you can barely see, this is a warrior, and he's got one of those guns, and I forget what it's called exactly. I have my list in Battlescribe, and I just don't remember 100%, and I don't, I was going to say I don't know where my phone is, but I do. So these guys have already been built, obviously. They've been textured because all my kill team guys are just basically on, I use the texture of the base as like an asphalt texture, and then I just put some rubble on the base. And when I paint them kind of like street colored because I want them to look like they're in an urban environment. So the texturing is done, and they've been primed with a dark color. It's one of the two colors from Krylon Camouflage. It is either khaki or desert, whichever one's darker. I forget. I know there's the two tan colors, and I can never remember which one's which. But so they've been primed like that. So, and then I've got Gene Stealers. Like literally my entire list is just Warriors and Gene Stealers. So here's a Gene Stealer, and I've got 3 of these guys built, but I think of the 2 lists that I have, only one of the lists has 3 of these guys. The other one has like 2 or 1, and then the rest are Gene Stealers. So that's fun. But my plan is as far as paint job is concerned, is I'm going to start off by throwing a wash on these guys, and then doing probably like a brown wash, maybe sepia. I haven't decided on that yet, but definitely it's going to start off with wash, and then big fat makeup brush to lighten up all of the, not the bony bits like this armor stuff on the top. I'm going to be doing this differently, but all the other parts, and like, you know, they're going to be wash and then a slightly drier kind of ivory sort of style dry brush as a highlight. And then all the bony parts, like the spiky carapace part back here, and I don't know, probably the scything talons and all that kind of junk, I'm going to be doing those in probably a color called Dark Net, which is a color from Turbo Dork, which makes this kind of color shifting kind of stuff. It's the same color I used on the wings of the big Nurgle Bug Rider Pusgoyle Blight Lord. I believe it's called the Pusgoyle Blight Lord. But if you've watched me paint that on Twitch, yeah, it's going to be that same color. That's the plan, at least. Although I did just recently get some new paints from Turbo Dork. So, yeah, I don't know. But I think that's probably going to be the color it's going to go. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's see here. I built a lot of historical models, yet for some reason don't really enjoy historical games. Haven't found one I like, though. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of historical games myself either, frankly. Like, there are some that take place in a historical time but are alternate history. You know, like your Dust, I think, is an interesting overall setting, though I'm not a super huge fan of the current rule set. I used to love Dust Warfare back in the day. I think Conflict 47 is really cool. That kind of stuff where you've got, like, yeah, it's, you know, Sherman tanks and Tommy guns, but it's also, you know, werewolves, and that Sherman tank has a laser cannon on it. You know, that kind of stuff. I'm a little bit more interested in that. Hello, Adam. Love your channel and soothing way of sharing your opinions and knowledge. Me and my girlfriend are trying to get into Kill Team, but it's a bit overwhelming. Is Warcry more beginner-friendly in a way? Well, thank you, number one. I appreciate that. Is Warcry more beginner-friendly? Maybe. To some degree, yes. Now, that being said, my biggest issue with Warcry, and it's not a huge issue, but it's still a pain in the butt, is that Warcry is designed to have a lot of iconography. So instead of saying, hey, your defense is this and your move is this, they have a little icon that shows what defense is, and they have a little icon that shows movement and things like that. And those are not the end of the world. Those are okay. That's fine. But then there's also little weird icons that also say, like, what kind of unit this is. Oh, this is a leader. Oh, this is a berserker. This is a such. And those are, in some situations, very frankly, difficult to tell, because probably about at least a good third of the icons have a skull in them. So if you're like, well, it's the skull icon, and then your opponent's like, well, which skull icon? Is it the one with the little tiny spikes, or is it the one with the bigger spikes and then the chin spike? Or is it, it's just, I kind of wish that they would, and they're doing the iconography thing to some degree so that it's easier for multiple languages, which I get. But it's also, the other thing that drives me nuts too is the instructions. They show you the icons, and they are printed white on black, so they're reversed. But on the cards, they're printed black on white, so they're not reversed. So now that's even harder when you. The icons are the worst part of Warcry, but otherwise I would say, yeah, Warcry is probably a bit more user-friendly to some degree, or beginner-friendly, partially because you don't have to worry about weapon loadouts as much. Like, they don't go, well, you can build this guy, but then you got these 5 different weapons possible, and plus he can also carry this type of knife, or he could do that, and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. It's more of like, you either build them, you know, a Skaven guy this way, or a Skaven guy that way, you know, for this particular model, you know, and it's a little bit simpler, I think, so that way. And there's just less shooting in general, too, which is also sometimes helpful, because you don't have to worry about cover as much and things like that, but I do like Warcry a good deal. The only Tyranid I have is a Carnifex. He's getting the coconut crab paint scheme. I've looked at the coconut crab paint scheme, and it looks super cool, but it also kind of looks like it might take more time than I'm interested in. But it does look really cool when it's well done. Let's see here. Tired of people who play the Germans and have nothing but tigers and panthers in their force and call it accurate. Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same with video games sometimes. You're playing like any kind of video game, especially like a World War II video game, and like most of your team is snipers, and you're like, well, that's weird. I wouldn't have done that, I don't think, you know. There was some game, there's a World War II game right now that's got a really strange name, but it's more realistic. And and I can't think of it right now. I've watched it on Twitch a little bit. Hell something. Hell broke loose. Hell something or other. And in that one, like, yeah, your entire team, like, you've got, it's like 25 players per side, I think, but you can only have maybe one sniper on each team or something like that. Hell broke loose? I don't know, something like that. I've watched, like I said, I've watched a little bit of Twitch about it, and I thought, oh, that's sort of interesting. But it's because and when I say realistic, there's not like a radar that you can constantly see where everybody is, and there's not like, it's slightly more realistic. I'll say that. In my opinion, Warcry is more beginner-friendly than Kill Team, says Zingbo. The rules are easier to learn, and the warband boxes allow you to build up a functional warband easily without too much expense. That's also true. That's a very good point. I mean, you can do warbands for Kill Team for relatively inexpensive as well. Not a lot of them, but some. I did a video about it years ago about how to build a warband or a Kill Team for $50 or less or whatever. And yeah, there are some, though. Do you think AR and voice recognition have a place in miniatures games, or do they want to say add 2 wound tokens to X and see that through my phone? I don't know. I did a video about AR a long time ago, less about building it into the game, more about playing a miniature-style turn-based game, but using AR. So there are literally there's no terrain, and there was a game called The Machines, which was astounding looking, but it was a real-time strategy, not turn-based, and I kind of wished it was turn-based. And I know I've seen there was an AR thing too that was for X-Wing, where you could tell it which ships you had, and then it would show you where they could move, which is kind of cheating if your opponent doesn't realize you're playing it, but it was designed for, practice purposes or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I got to be honest with you. AR is still kind of a pain because you got to hold your phone up and look through it. You know what I mean? You'd be like, yeah, let me just take a look. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah. AR will get wildly popular when it's in our glasses, frankly, I think. And that's a ways off. When you have to stare through your phone to see AR, it's much more of a novelty. When it just becomes something that you can just look down at the board and see that that's still got 3 wounds and this is this or whatever, then that will become not just for tabletop gaming, but just the fact that you can just look through your normal glasses that look relatively simple. They maybe look a little bit fancier, have a little bit of shenanigans going on them, and not just perfect, like completely nobody knows that they're AR glasses. But nonetheless, once it gets to that point, I could see that being more of a killer app. Like the Google Glass was sort of goofy because it was just basically a little tiny thing over here. So you could see just a little bit of information up here that was like, oh yeah, look at that right there. And but I don't know, we'll see. What's your opinion on the current Eldar and Tyranid models? Do you think they should be updated? No, they shouldn't be. Yes, I mean, all models should be eventually updated. I have no idea when they'll be updated, obviously. Gene Stealers are kind of getting old looking. There have been some newer things that have come out for Tyranids, like by newer, I mean within the last 5 years, I guess. But an Eldar, I don't know. I just don't like Eldar. I don't like the aesthetics of the look. But they are obviously focusing quite a bit on the Age of Sigmar side, on elves. So I suspect you'll probably start to see more stuff eventually on Eldar. And I don't have any 100% sure, conviction on this. But the reason I think, generally, that Games Workshop has a tendency to keep putting out more and more and more different Space Marines is because they sell. I think that if people weren't buying them, they would stop producing as many of them. If people didn't buy Primaris Lieutenants by the shed load, I don't know that they would keep making Primaris Lieutenants. It's become a joke, but, and even one that GW will mention from time to time. And like, hey, guess what? We're making another Primaris Lieutenant. Hey, you don't have enough of those. And, and people will gnash the teeth and rend garments and stuff, but they fly off the shelves. So that's the way it works. They're a business. And I don't know that Eldar maybe sell as well. I think if Eldar sold really, really crazy well, and if Tyranids sold really super crazy well, they would crank out a lot more models for them. Making those injection molds, I was talking before about kind of slightly soft detail on models versus GW have very sharp detail. That sharp detail, from what I have been told, more than doubles the cost of any mold. So, you know, when they make stuff that is their quality that we're all used to, like every once in a while they'll produce a piece of terrain and people will be like, this is really soft detail, what's going on? If it's not sharp and clean like everything else that you guys make, that's them deciding to make a mold that doesn't cost as much as all the rest of the molds they make, especially because they're bigger, because they're pieces of terrain. So yeah, that's the thing. The reason that they make, you know, they keep putting out more Space Marine stuff is because it keeps flying off the shelves. So yeah, I don't know how to fix that problem, you know, but that seems to be the indicator as far as that's concerned. We'll probably get Cyber Eyes before we get decent AR glasses. That's probably true. That'd be pretty cool. Speaking of Cyber Eyes, so Cyberpunk 2077 is a video game that was supposed to come out like this week, I think, and is now coming out in December, in theory. But the tabletop RPG that game is based off of, which was originally called Cyberpunk 2020, I think, it came out in the 80s probably. The new version of that game is called Cyberpunk Red, and the PDF download version, I think, became available yesterday because it was supposed to come out at the same time that the video game came out. And they finally were just like, we're just going to put it out because, you know. Now, the print version, I think, is on a boat, so it's not here yet, and it'll come eventually. But if you're interested in the PDF, there's places you can find it online. I think, like Drive-Thru RPG for one. If you're interested in that kind of cyberpunk stuff, you could buy the digital PDF version currently of the new book for, like, I think it's $30, and because the book's going to be $60 when it comes out. But yeah, so if you're into that kind of stuff, talking about Cyber Eyes and whatnot, yeah, that's a thing that is now available, which I just found out about vaguely through Twitter. Like, it's not, they haven't pushed it marketing wise as much as I would have thought, but there it is. So are we getting Battleforce 40K boxes this Christmas, or are they canceled? I don't know that with the virus and the pandemic, I would be sort of surprised if we do get them. Or if we do get them, maybe they'll just be a touch late. Because I know that a bunch of people online have been saying, well, geez, usually those battle forces are announced at the beginning of November, and they're not announced yet. So they've been having some supply issues, just like many other companies of all stripes, not just in tabletop gaming, but all kinds of companies have been having supply issues this year because of the pandemic. And so, yeah, I think that if we see them, they will potentially be a little bit later than we're used to. People buy Primaris Lieutenant because they think they will make some money off of it if they save it for a few years. I mean, that's possibly true too, as well. I just think some of them are just very cool looking. I own a couple as well. Let's see. That's why I like Age of Sigmar more, because it's not just about Sigmarines. There was a lot of Sigmar releases for quite a while, but now they have pulled away from that a little bit. Bit off topic, but how would you say Warcry compares to Fallout Wasteland Warfare? Big, if casual. 40k and Age of Sigmar gamer dipped into Wasteland Warfare, and a friend dipped into Warcry, so we're back and forth. I mean, how's that compare? I think the Warcry models are a lot better. That being said, Wasteland Warfare does have solo play if you want to play that way, and I think co-op. But definitely solo play. I think Warcry is probably a little easier to play as far as if you're looking at like from a beginner aspect or anything like that. I have not played a ton of Fallout Wasteland Warfare, but it's not bad. I frankly think there's a few too many tokens that you have to kind of keep track of. Cyberpunk 2020 was great. Played a lot in the 80s. Yeah, I played a lot of Shadowrun in the 90s. Yeah, but I did not play a lot of Cyberpunk 2020. The creator of Cyberpunk 2020 has a great baritone voice. Yes, Mike Pondsmith. He's very cool. I've met him and talked to him at least once. Actually, 2 years ago in Reno at the game manufacturers trade show. Me and Game Format went over and talked to him and some other folks from his company about just our services and about Game 4 and about, hey, if you're looking for a companion app for your RPG and stuff like that and whatnot. And so, yeah, he was very nice. Let's see here. I need to... Oh, no. Are you interested in the collectibles gaming company's release, like the GW Siege of Terra map? I don't know anything about that. I'm not super into collectibles. Now, that being said, I do, within arm's reach here for reasons, have one of the Bandai Space Marine guys. He's just sitting here on the chair next to me over here. But for the most part, no, I'm not usually into the collectibles. But I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know why. Let's see here. Space Marines are also the army everybody tells you to play when you're a beginner. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I found, at least in 40K, when I used to play more frequently, I did have a tendency to play... Well, I did play Space Marines for a while. I played Black Templar. And then I also played Chaos Marines. And I would play against Eldar, and I'd play against different armies and stuff like that. Dark Eldar and things like that. And I was always amazed by, like, the crazy crap that they would get for, like, weird attacks, weird spells, whatever, psychic attacks, and all this stuff. Like, and it did seem very, like, the stuff that I had, even as Chaos, was relatively vanilla. I have bolters. I shoot you with the bolters. Sometimes we get into hand-to-hand combat. That happens. But you've got, like, a grenade that, like, knocks out vehicles, and this person's got, and you have a tank that shoots a shield and can, like, it was just, and like, that tank rolls how many dice? And all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting, and I don't know if it's just an information bias or whatever, but I always felt like I was underpowered as the Space Marine player. I always felt when I played against Xenos, I was always like, well, and partially it's also because I'm not a good player, and, there's that too, but I did frequently feel nearly persecuted. Like, playing against whatever those hover tanks are, whatever the main hover tanks are that the Eldar get, that have just covered in guns. Like, when that repulsor tank finally came out for the Primaris, and people were like, that's got so many guns on it, it can shoot so much, and I was like, it's almost as many shots as, like, the whatever that dumb hover tank is. I can't remember what it's called, from the Eldar. But yeah, the problem is also I had a tendency to play against people who, very well-meaning, good people, love them, but especially one of my friends doesn't know how to make a list that is not a real bone crusher. Like, this is just a really super fluffy, friendly list, and I'm like, and we get done with the map, or done with the game, I'm like, that was not fluffy. There was no fluff. And he's like, no, I think it was still. I'm like, no, it's not fluffy. But yeah. So anyway, that was difficult. Let's see here. Played a fair bit of Shadowrun as well. Both great games. A lot of dice in Shadowrun. That's, yeah. Let's see. Have you seen the new Army Painter metallic colors? Looking forward to them. I keep hearing about them, but I haven't seen them yet. No. 5-gallon bucket of Orc Boys. Keep it simple. That's definitely a strategy. I went big into collectibles when my child was young and required a lot of attention. Axis and Allies, both systems, War at Sea was a better game in my opinion. Oh, like there was the Axis and Allies game where you didn't know what you were going to get in the box, and it was like kind of like HeroClix and stuff like that. But yeah, I remember those. Those were. I remember a lot of people liked those models to use them for other stuff other than that game. At least the people that I knew, they got into them. Let's see here. Carl from Independent Characters says that Chaos Space Marines is better for beginners because they have the different kinds of units, including monsters and demons. That makes sense. That does make sense. And Carl's a pretty smart guy. Wave Serpents, that's what it is. Eldar Wave Serpents were great in Epic. Well, they're also still, I think, kind of great in 40K. At least I was on the wrong side of them quite frequently. Got to say that although I'm admittedly a terrible 40K player, same here, Xenos never appealed to me because of their great advantages, in my opinion, which is why I like Kill Team, which is smaller scale and grittier. One of the reasons I like Kill Team, frankly, is because there's no vehicles. And it's always weird to me when someone's like, you know what they should do? They should put vehicles in Kill Team. And I hear people tell me that all the time, and I'm like, yeah, that's 40K. That's what they did. They put it on a bigger board too, and you put in more people, and so you can play. It's like huge. It's 40K. The reason that I like Kill Team, the reason I like Warcry is because they are on small boards, and you're playing with fewer models, and there's not any vehicles. It's just a personal preference thing. I was going to say I'm not against army games anymore, and I'm not against them. Like, I'm not morally opposed. I just don't find myself wanting to play them anymore. Other people want to play them. That's awesome. They should totally do that, and I'm glad that they're out there in the industry. But for me, I generally like to play smaller skirmish-style games, and partially it's because I like to be able to, paint fewer models. Like this entire... Let me see if I can get all of my Tyranids in my hand that I'll be using in Warcry. Or, not Warcry. That would be weird. In Kill Team. Let's see here. I mean, this is not recommended to put all of your models into one hand because they're gonna, I don't know, they might get scratched or something, but is that all of them? Because the rest of this box is Tau and Adeptus Mechanicus. This is my box labeled built Kill Teams, so those are the next guys who are in the painting thing. So that's my entire Kill Team list in one hand, right? So that's a handful of Tyranids and Warriors. And I like the fact that I can do that. It's silly to actually do it, but I'm just saying the fact that I can have such a small force and play with it and enjoy it, and specifically paint it, and then go and do another small force of Tau or a little small force of Adeptus Mechanicus, allows me also to be able to paint a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I've talked about it over and over again, talking about buffet style, although we may not have buffets anymore after a while, just because, it's not good in a pandemic, certainly. Like, there's a Golden Corral is a big nationwide chain of buffets, and the one here in town closed. Like, I think that they may have permanently closed because they're just like, yeah, we're gonna... Or they may have just hibernated, I don't know, but you can't go there anymore. So anyway, the whole concept, though, about being able to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that versus well, I'm interested in Grey Knights, but I'm not 2,000 points interested in Grey Knights. You know what I mean? That's one of the things I love about games like Kill Team and like Warcry and Planet 28 and Zona Alpha and all kinds of skirmishy style games. I dig those a lot. Do you play Blood Bowl? I don't, but I have played Blitz Bowl, and I have painted up... Did I paint both my orcs and my humans, or just my humans for Blitz Bowl? I don't remember. I do have a Skaven Blood Bowl team that is built and primed, but they have not been painted. The thing is that I don't know anybody locally who plays. That's also part of the problem, too, so... Speaking of skirmish games, you taken a look at Marvel Crisis Protocol? Yes. I own the starter box, which I bought at the beginning of the pandemic, back in March, because I'm like, oh, I'll work on that. Well, I haven't, because I've been doing other stuff. But I also have the Hulk and Venom, because those two kits came in the Adepticon swag box thing. Because I would have gotten it at Adepticon, but we didn't have an Adepticon, so they just shipped out the swag to the people who'd done that, which is nice. What was my point? Oh, I have not played yet. I've not even built any of them yet. I know it's getting popular, though, because my local shop has actually just recently decided to go, I don't want to say all in, but they went from just having the starter box to now having an entire shelf of that stuff. Including X-Men and a bunch of other stuff and terrain bits and all that kind of different things. So it's getting popular in my area, so that's nice. Honestly, my local shop is finding more people coming in playing Marvel and Star Wars Legion. They're finding more people coming in playing that than are coming in playing 40K right now. I mean, admittedly, there's not a lot of gaming going on in store, but there is some that's going on, but it's usually like you got to wear a mask while you're there the entire time, and they're like limiting how many people can be in the store at any given time and stuff like that, so it's a little few and far between, but there's definitely that. Let's see here. One question you might know about: any idea why there is no tabletop game of Stargate? It seems like an easy and awesome setting, but no one has done it. I mean, licensing is always kind of a thing, like you have to look at, as a company, if you've decided we're going to license this game, you have to first decide will that, will we be able to sell enough? Games Workshop does Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff, right? So they had to determine, is the licensing fee worth it for us for how much of it we can sell to make our money back and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, licensed games, some do well and some don't. Like I was just talking about Marvel, just talking about Star Wars. Obviously, those are both licensed. But that being said, there have been plenty of other licensed games out there that didn't work out. There was a Halo, fleet combat game, which I remember seeing a booth for at Gen Con or someplace. And I was like, I don't see myself playing that. And that didn't work out very well. But there's been multiple Halo games. Like there was a Halo Clicks game that was basically from WizKids. And I remember, and they were pre-painted and a bunch of different, and there was this humongous alien walker that you could buy that was seriously $250, and it was, I don't know, 2.5, 3 feet across. It was massive. And I thought, that's all right, well, and yeah, again, that didn't really stick very well either. So yeah, there's a bunch of different things out there that I think, as far as licensing can be, sometimes you look at it and go, that show's been off the air for X amount of years, we could do it. There was a Starship Troopers miniature game that also didn't go anywhere really, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, we have to drive 4 hours to get to the nearest Sizzlers here, and they've probably shut down as well. We had a Sizzlers, I think, when I was a kid. Or am I thinking of something else? Maybe we had Mr. Steak. We had a Mr. Steak. That was different. I don't think we ever had a Sizzlers here. I was on winter training but came back home because my CO got corona. 2 weeks off and a lot of Gaslands and Kit Bashes chaos to paint. Well, sounds okay to me. I hope your CO gets better. But yeah. Love the new Battletech stuff by Catalyst. Seems like it's the same old rule set I have loathed for 30 years, though. Too bad they couldn't innovate with the rules. Yeah, a couple of years back at Gen Con, I signed up for an event that Catalyst was putting on because there's classic Battletech that they do. And then there's the other version, which is called either First Strike or Alpha Strike. I think it's called Alpha Strike. And the Alpha Strike is supposed to be a simpler, streamlined version of the rules. But classic Battletech was also supposed to be streamlined to some degree in comparison to the old Battletech that FASA used to do that I remember. And I sat down there's a long table, and it was just all little 2-foot by 2-foot boards, and you were sitting across from one person, so it was one-on-one, and then there was a person from the company or whatever who was just teaching us all what to do. And so you're like, okay, step one is going to do this, and so we were learning the game. And so I was sitting across from a guy who was maybe about my age, maybe a touch younger, and he was also a person who had played back in the day and also wanted to find out how streamlined it was. And by about the second turn, we both realized that this was, as far as we could tell, absolutely no different from the game we remembered, and we just started playing. And the guy would walk by and be like, "No, we're not doing that this step. That's not." We're like, "We got it. We're fine. It's fine." And so he just kept teaching the other people, and we just played the game, and it was fine. But and again, it was one mech on one mech. Most people don't play that way, and then that it doesn't exponentially make the length of the game longer, but it does make the length of the game a lot longer, and there's a lot more paperwork and stuff like that. And I do wish that they would fix that stuff. That I wish they would fix the main rules. I think that'd be cool. Any ideas on how I can convince my wife to play Kill Team with me? She likes the painted miniatures, but doesn't like the killing each other aspect while playing. Well, if you play a a campaign, then technically you're not dead. Usually the way it works is that you are out of action. And then in between rounds, in between games, then you go through all the people who are out of action and go, okay, well, what happened to this person? And then you roll on a little chart, and they will tell you, oh, well, they're toughness -1 for the next game, or they got better and it's fine, or whatever. And also, or they died. So you could just take that out of that chart so that they don't die, and then they just, they get better. So yeah, you could do that. The Marvel game is a different scale than 40K, right? What's the scale? I don't remember the scale in train terms. It's not HO, I don't think. But I forget what it is. But yeah, the scale, instead of being 28/32 millimeter, it's much more 40 millimeter. So but there is a train scale, you're making a train board in your basement and choo-choo and all that kind of stuff. There is a scale of that 40 millimeter is very, very much like. And the benefit then is then you can go to your local, hobby shop that sells train stuff, and you could buy terrain from the train shop. Anyway, you could buy some of that stuff, which is very frequently not as expensive as hobby stuff, or our hobby stuff. It's very frequently sometimes either made out of colored plastic or pre-painted in some fashion, so maybe you weather it or maybe you don't. It's up to you. But yeah, there is a scale, and I forget what it is. If you do a Google search, I'm sure you'll find it. There is a train scale that is basically the same as 40 millimeter / Marvel Crisis Protocol, and then you can use a lot of that stuff, and it works out pretty well. Alpha Strike is much quicker and allows more models on the table. Alpha Strike. I never, ever get that one. I always think First Strike, and I don't know why. Classic is still the same. Alpha is better and became more of a skirmish game when Lances can fight an hour. See, and then the problem is that a couple of years ago I think it was at the Origins game fair in Columbus, and I walked up to the Catalyst booth, and they had all these models for Alpha Strike. And they're having this really great sale. You could buy, if you bought all these models, you got like a super crazy great sale. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And I'm like, how much does the book with the rules cost? And they're like, oh yeah, we don't have any of those in stock. So I was like, wait, so you want to sell me the models for a game you don't have the rules for? And they're like, well, yeah, we're gonna maybe have them next year. And I'm like, and so yeah. So then the last time I was at Origins, which was 2019, I was in a booth with the folks from Vallejo and WizKids painting miniatures. It was WizKids, miniatures, teaching classes and stuff like that. And I was right across from Catalyst, and I walked over to Catalyst, and then they had, they finally had the Alpha Strike rules, and then they didn't have any of those models anymore. So they just flipped, and I'm like, I can't. I wish you guys would get your stuff together a little bit better. And because I like some of the people that I know from that company, and I've always been a fan of BattleTech and things like that, but I'm having a hard time with it, so it's not, yeah. Anyway. Just wanted to say thanks for the 28 magazine recommendation like a month ago. Absolutely adoring it. And INQ/AOS 28 scene. Yeah, that whole scene is very interesting. That's one of the reasons I like Planet 28, that game I was mentioning earlier. It is because Planet 28 is designed to work with those kind of like that kind of kit bashing scene, but it is a simple set of rules that you can play to play skirmish games with those types of models, as opposed to the one downside to the Inquisition 28 kind of thing is that there's a lot of different people trying to use a lot of different rule sets, and that's fine if you and your group decide on one, but if you're just like, I want to play with some of these models that I've been kit bashing and making look cool, but I don't know what rule set to use, and it's kind of hard to there's not like a specific, this is the rule set that we all use, this is the way. It's more of a, and so Planet 28 kind of is a nice little, very simple rule set. It's like a 16-page book, and you can go in there and use your cool kit bash models and stuff like that, because there's basically like an equation that says, okay, well, this is how you build, like points-wise. You go, okay, I want this and this and this and this gun with these stats and stuff like that, and the number is, boom, here you go, there's your points. And so instead of having like an army book that says these guys cost this much points and this gun costs this much points, it's more follow these steps and then you'll come up with a point total. And so you can kind of build whatever you sort of want, which is cool. Being told that O scale is the 40 millimeter equivalent. So if you're looking for vehicles or not vehicles, probably vehicles too, but if you're looking for like buildings and things like that for Marvel Crisis Protocol Lunchbox Rainbow, then the train scale of O scale is the way to go. Always hated keeping track of heat, and the pilot skills rolls do be simple. See, this is the thing. There's a lot of accounting that's going on, you're right, a lot of bookkeeping that's going on in a game like BattleTech, which is better handled by a computer. There becomes, and I think I made a video about this a long time ago, like, if a game becomes too much simulation, a tabletop game, it becomes less fun to play. And we have computers now, and they can do that. And that's why you play BattleTech, the video game, more frequently, even though it's still turn-based and it's still kind of top-down and all that kind of stuff. The PC game version of BattleTech that was put out by Harebrained Schemes, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, in my opinion, if you want to play BattleTech, that's the way to play it, because it's turn-based, so it's not like, it's also, you're not in the cockpit, because I used to play a bunch of those Microsoft Mech Warrior games, and basically what would happen if you were playing multiplayer is you just got into a circle where you just kept walking around Like you torso twist, you and your opponent, both of you just walk in a circle and keep shooting each other until one of you lost. And that was kind of boring. When you're playing the BattleTech game from Harebrained Schemes on PC, it's turn-based, so you're like, okay, I'm going to put this guy over here and turn him that way. He's going to look, this guy's going to go over here, and then, the opponent gets to move and all that kind of stuff. And it's pretty cool. Plus, you get little tiny trees that start on fire and blow up and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like having a tabletop, and you can move around from any angle and look at it top down and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like having a really well done board to play BattleTech on. Also, it takes care of all of the rules of like, do I have line of sight? Do I not have line of sight? That was always a problem with BattleTech for us too. When we used to play, you could always be like, I think I can hit you. You're like, no, it's because the rules here say that because this is level 3 and this is... Ugh. So all of that extra crap is generally better held in the mind of a computer than in my mind, God knows. So, yeah. Does anyone know how tall the Star Wars Legion figures are compared to 40k? I was thinking about using the battle droids for an abominable intelligence army. I would say that it's probably closer to 32. It's not as big as Marvel. Yeah, I would say it's... So, like, if... Depending on who you look at within 40k or Age of Sigmar, we hover a little bit between the 28 to 32 millimeter. I would say the Primaris Marines are a little bit more 32, Sigmar a little bit more 32, Imperial Guard a little bit more 28. I would say that the Star Wars Legion stuff's a little bit closer to 30, 32-ish, roughly, about that. Let's see. I'm pretty excited for Mantic Armada coming out. It's on my list for my birthday or Christmas. The models that I've been seeing are very cool looking. I don't know if I'm into ship combat personally. I don't know why that is. I've been role-playing in the BattleTech universe since February, but no one plays the miniature game around me, and I'm a follower. I think it would be a lot of fun. I think, yeah, I had friends who played because back then the tabletop RPG, I think, was called Mech Warrior. I think it was called Mech Warrior. And I had some friends who played, but I never did play that RPG. I bought the Unmade for Warcry strictly because they looked cool, but I am somewhat interested in learning Warcry. Do I really have to buy RNG cards like a TCG? I don't think so, no. They're like random number generator cards? I don't think so. Yeah. Like, there are cards that are for the armies, but they are just like if you want to play, let's say, Skaven, if you can find the Skaven cards, it has just basically cards. If you buy the Unmade and they come in the box, they already come with all the cards you need. But if you buy Skaven, just any old Skaven or any old other regular Age of Sigmar army that's not an army designed specifically for Warcry, which now I think they're up to 8 different armies for Warcry. But if you just decide to go with Stormcast or Nighthaunt, like I'm doing, and that kind of stuff, then you just have to buy the cards so that you know all the stats. Although these new faction books that they're going to be coming out with soon, that are the 4 different main grand alliances, you got your Order, you got your Chaos, you got your Destruction, and you got your Death. I think, and I don't know because I haven't paid close attention, but I think each of those books is basically going to be kind of like replacing the cards. Like, you want to know all the stats for Nighthaunts? They're in the Death book. Along with all the stats for Flesh Eater Courts and yada, yada, yada. Now, the only downside is that if you like the cards, you like just putting them on the table in front of you going, these are my 3 units that I'm using in this warband, and here are the cards in front of me, then the cards are sort of nice. But there's not any randomness to it. It's not like you're not collecting like a Magic card deck or anything like that. That's not how that works. Those cards are just like, this is where the stats are. It's a little weird, I will admit. I wish that they would have just come up with the books for straight away and skipped the cards, or made the cards easier to get. Because sometimes you're like, oh, the cards are out of stock? Well, we're not making any more of them. And I'm like, well, then I'm not going to play your dumb game, I guess. If you don't make the stuff for it, that drives me nuts. But what are you going to do? Any thoughts on any Warhammer video game? I know that they're coming out with a game eventually called Dark Tide, which is basically you are Imperial Guard, and you are fighting against Chaos as if it was a Left 4 Dead game, or Vermintide. So, yeah, it's like you and 3 other people are Imperial Guard, and it's just going to be a swarm of Chaos, whereas if you play Vermintide 2 specifically, we're a bunch of like, you know, Warhammer Fantasy good guys, and it's just nonstop Skaven trying to eat our faces, and that's fun too. Me and moderator Matt have played Vermintide 2 from time to time. Battletech also has a massive free gameplay expansion called Rogue Tech that's available for free if you want some in-depth customization. Never heard of that. Interesting. Maybe Tabletop Minions could show it off. Show what off? Wait. Speaking of leg iron, you've not seen a Darth Vader mini till you've seen Emily's. Oh, that's true. Yes, that's a very good point. Yes, Emily did make me a lovely Darth Vader. It's in the basement, so I should put a picture of it on Instagram. Yeah, that was very nice. I always thought that the original Darth Vader that came in the original starter box for Star Wars Legion, he just was not a very inspiring sculpt, and I said that it kind of looked like he was supposed to be using the Force, but it just sort of looked like he was going to grab something off a shelf, like at the grocery store, and so she painted me a tiny little diorama of Darth Vader at the grocery store buying some snacks, and there's little tiny Cheetos bags and little tiny boxes of 12 packs of soda and stuff like that. It was the dark side of savings, but yes, it was lovely. So yeah, I will have to take a picture of it, put it on Instagram. New Skaven box has cards and models. Yeah, like that. The same with all of the Night Haunt box comes with cards for the models that are in the box. Same with, I think, the Stormcast. All those boxes where they've taken regular Age of Sigmar models and put them into a box that says it's Warcry on it. You know, it's like the more red and black instead of the normal. Yeah, those have got the cards in them as well for those armies. Although I don't know if it has all of the cards. It's got all the cards that come in the box, but I don't know if it has all of the cards that are available for Warcry for that army. Let me say that. The AOS boxes with double warbands don't come with the cards. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they not? Why would they give you the figures but not give you the stats for the figures? The AOS boxes with double warbands? Well, if they're Age of Sigmar boxes, then they're not technically for Warcry. So yeah, then they wouldn't come with Warcry cards. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Sorry. Against my better judgment, I am excited for that mobile MMO they are making. I don't think I'm familiar with that. Currently playing Inquisitor and loving it, Diablo clone. I think I know the game you're talking about. I've looked at that, I think, a bit as well. Ye old rat slappers, yes, that's me and moderator Matt playing the Vermintide 2. Do you think Ord time for a new Kill Team starter box? I can't. I don't think I can understand what that means. Sorry. I'm not sure. Jeff Vader, head of catering. Oh yeah, that could be. How much more complex than Kill Team is Necromunda? I would say a little bit more complex. Not a ton, but a little. Yeah, not greatly more complex, I would say. There really should be a video game version of 40K or Kill Team, but I do understand why GW wouldn't want to do that. Well, I mean, they did Space Marine. That was a 40K version of, video game. It was not like tabletop version. It wasn't like, turn-based, move these guys over here, move those guys over there. But they've also done Dawn of War. There was 3 of those. Those were a lot closer to the tabletop. I mean, not really, because it's basically a real-time strategy. But yeah, nose itches. I still want them to make, to this day, I basically want them to make a Battlefield game, like Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1942, whatever, but like the most recent Battlefield game, which was Battlefield 5, I think. I want them to make a game just like that, but with Imperial Guard. Or think of the Star Wars Battlefront game, where one side's like all Imperial Guard, but every once in a while you can come onto the board as a Space Marine. Whereas if you ever played the Battlefront game from the Star Wars stuff from, I think it's EA, you're a regular Hoth trooper, but every once in a while you can come on as Luke Skywalker or whatever, that kind of thing. So I mean, it wouldn't be hard. They could do something like that, and that'd be kind of cool. Sorry for the spelling. The iPhone is so small. No problem. I just I couldn't understand what you were saying. Those Warcry boxes have all the cards for that faction. Well, that's good to hear. Let's see here. I really don't need any more plastic to add to the pile, but Skaven look like they would be a fun distraction to all the 40k I've been painting. I enjoyed painting the Skaven that I did. I painted Skaven on Twitch. I did 13 Plague Monks. Yes, Plague Monks. I don't know, a couple months back, and they were a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to playing with them. Picked up 2 new Warcry boxes, and yes, they do come with more cards and models in the box. Nice. Okay, well, that's good to hear. That would sort of suck if they only gave you the cards that are just for those boxes. That would have been a bummer. The Warcry Chaos Warbands, like Unmade, Untamed Beasts, etc., come in 20 mini boxes for use with Slaves of Darkness, Age of Sigmar, or in Warcry 10 mini boxes with cards. Oh, yeah, because you can use, you're right, you can use the special Warcry figures in Age of Sigmar, but then they don't give you the cards to use them also in Warcry. That's interesting. Huh. I have not seen those boxes in the shop. The Age of Sigmar Warcry boxes. I've just seen the Warcry boxes, or the Warcry boxes that have Age of Sigmar models in them. Like I said, and now they came out with the Orcs, and they came out with Skaven, and previously they had Nighthaunts and Stormcast, and maybe something else. I wouldn't pick up the Skaven box for Warcry. Those old Rat Ogre sculpts are ugly. Yeah, I've got, like I said, I've got predominantly all Plague Monks. They're fun. I have some other models that I could probably also use as them, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't have any of the Rat Ogres as well either. I'm from Europe, but next year I'll be studying in Minnesota. Couldn't make it to Madison, Wisconsin, unfortunately. I wonder if you know any gaming communities in Minneapolis that play Warcry. I mean, I don't know any because it's a good 5-hour drive away, I think. But yeah, there's plenty. I'm sure there's plenty of gaming groups in the Minneapolis area. Just Midwest in general has got a lot of tabletop gaming, just because it's really cold and snowy and crappy about 6 months of the year, so we stay inside a lot. Star Wars Battlefront should have been Warhammer, I swear to God. Yeah, that would have been a lot of fun. Hey, Adam, do you think that the GW supply chain issue will affect the release of the Battle Force Christmas boxes? Yeah, we were just talking about that. Probably. It seems like they announced last year's Battle Forces this time last year. Yeah, I'm sure everything will be late this year. I'm sure they won't talk about it because marketing probably doesn't think it's a great idea. But frankly, I think they need to talk about it just because, I mean, I don't know. It's something that we should all be used to by this point. I mean, the pandemic's been going on for 6-7 months now. And it's going to keep going for a while. But, yeah, they need to, I would think it would be smart of them to be like, I mean, they said early on, like, oh, stuff's going to be problematic. But then lately, like, I know people who work at stores who are like, yeah, we've been having a hard time getting GW stock, but GW hasn't said anything about it, but they keep advertising it like, oh, you should pre-order all this stuff, and then they don't have it to actually send out. I mean, they do, but not as much in the great quantities that they usually would, and that's problematic. So, if you're a fan of GW, which I am, I like a lot of their models and stuff like that, and obviously some of their games as well, you're going to understand, you know what I mean? You're going to be like, yeah, I get it. It's not, everything's messed up. This is unprecedented. And so, yeah. But, yeah, I think the reason that we haven't seen it, and to be perfectly honest, maybe this is the right plan. Because if they had said, oh, yeah, we're going to do this, it's going to be our normal Christmas Battlefront or Battle Force box, it'll be great, and then they couldn't get it out enough in great enough orders, it would have caused a lot more discord and issues. So, right. So maybe just the fact that they're like, we're going to hold off until we know we have enough in stock, or whatever the deal is. Maybe they're just going to skip it this year. It could be that too, Again, it's not like a normal year. The fact that the console companies decided, like, no, man, we're still running ahead. We're going to still hit these dates that we set at the beginning of last year or whatever. Well, we're starting to see that, A, there's not enough Xboxes and not enough PlayStations out there. And I've been watching a bunch of news lately that's saying a lot of them have been broken. But to be fair, or have been breaking very quickly. But to be fair, that does seem to happen. Like the Red Ring of Death, if you remember that from the old Xbox 360. I just feel like the game companies, Sony and Xbox, probably pushed a little too hard when they probably should have been like, well, let's try to dial it back a little bit. Let's try to manage expectations a little bit better, that kind of stuff. And just pretend that this isn't happening on the globe, you know? It's kind of hard. Caradon Overlords is the one I forgot for Warcry as well. That's a good point. I've never painted those dudes, and I kind of want to. Let's see here. When are we going to see Uncle Adam as Mini Wargamer Dave versus Mini Wargamer Dave Battle Report? Well, I mean, I'd have to go back to Canada, which currently I don't know they'll let us in. But I had a battle report against Mini Wargamer Matt when I was there back in June of 2019. I'm trying to think when the battle report came out. We played Kill Team. I think I had Primaris Marines versus his... Well, so I brought all six of my Kill Team armies, and then we basically rolled off to see which army we would each play. So he got my Death Guard, and I think it was my Primaris, if I remember correctly. The Primaris and some Reavers. And I won that game pretty handily, but I think it was mainly dice. I think that's right. I think that's what we did. And then we did another one that's only available to Vault members, which was me playing Imperial Guard versus him playing Death Watch. But yeah, we did that. That video came out maybe in July or August, I think. It didn't come out right away in June for sure. It was July or August, maybe September of 2019. So if you go back and look at their catalog, you'll at least see me play Matt. But yeah, I didn't get a chance to play against Dave. Let's see. Unless it restocked today, Jacob Bugman is still sold out online despite being front and center as an order now. Yeah. I only vaguely know what that is. I know that I know it's an Age of Sigmar thing and it's a relation to like Bugman's Ale and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't pay close enough attention. But I think it was supposed to be like the kind of like the holiday. Like last year it was the Red Gabo, I think was the holiday model. And it's one of those situations where you'll probably eventually see it. Like, I think right now there's a shop in town, one of the two shops in town here right now. I think that or else it's the one in Appleton. I know there's a shop near me that has one of those still on the shelf, you know, at regular price. And it's like, you know, it's the limited edition holiday one from like last year, but they still got it on the table. Well, heck, I bought last year, 2019, I bought a copy of the Inquisitor book, the Inquisitor game from 2002 that had been sitting on the shelf since 2002 at a local shop one city over. It had been sitting there. I've been seeing it for years, and then when this Inquisition 28 stuff started getting popular, or I started noticing it at least, it wasn't probably when it got popular. It got popular before then, but when I started paying attention, I was like, oh, I want to buy that book and just kind of thumb through it and check it out and stuff like that. And I'm like, I started looking on eBay, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I think there's one on the shelf at the shop in Appleton, and I went there, and there it was. So... Sorry, Uncle Adam, you got to stay out of Canada. Well, it's not just me. It's Americans, because we're diseased, or whatever. Caradon Overlords are amazing. Steampunk dwarf pirates in an airship. One of them even comes with a robot parrot. Nice. Yeah, I always thought those models were interesting. I got a friend here in town who did those models, and he basically kit bashed them and gave them all Skaven heads. So they're basically Skaven, like they were like Skaven in the Caradon Overlord, like, you know, but they just didn't have the dwarf heads. They just had Skaven heads and stuff. And then he put a bunch of Skaven symbols on their ships, and their ships were all rusty and stuff like that. It was very cool, very well done. I doubt Canada wants Americans bringing any more Rona over the border right now. Yep, I agree. I don't think we're allowed in there right now. I don't think most of Europe will have us either, which, you know, we don't deserve to go places. I have no problem with Adam coming to Canada. If you need a place to crash, hook me up. I'll handle my wife. I'd have to be quarantined probably first, just to be sure. Let's see. I'm super keen to pick up the Blood Bowl Zote that is coming out. Is it Zote or Zoat? I think it's Zote. Just got to make up some rules to play in Blitz Bowl. He seems awful big for Blitz Bowl, but, well, you know, give him a try. We rolled up the carpet and turned off the lights and hid the cat till you get the virus under control. That will take some time, unfortunately. Um, but yes. So yeah, I'm trying to think what's like my next, like, besides getting these Tyranids done, which like I said, I think I'm looking forward to painting them. I'm going to be painting a lot of, like I said, they're like a lot of these little panels, right? I don't know how well you can see this, not great. But the little panels that make up like the back part, where it's like the bony, like those parts are going to be the darker parts, and I'm going to be hand brushing on. Dark Net is the name of the color from Turbo Dork. That's the plan. So it'll be this sort of like metallic, real dark with like a bit of a green sheen to it. And then the rest of the body is basically this color, only it's going to be a little bit lighter in the highlights, and it's going to be, instead of using wash, I was actually considering using contrast. I was thinking about using like Agoros Dunes, or is it Agoros Dunes? I get that all wrong all the time, I'm sure. But my plan was to use that contrast, let that completely dry, and then do the dry brushing. And the idea being that the dry brushing is going to happen, and it's going to get all over the bony plates that I'm going to paint later, and that's fine because I'm going to paint them later, so then I could just go back over it. But the thing is about that dark net color from Turbo Dork, and most of the Turbo Dork colors, is that you have to put down a color first before you put another color on top of it. Dark net, you have to put down black. And so I would do that. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I've been thinking about it. I mean, there's going to be other little parts, like their little teeth and all kinds of stuff like that. And their tongues are going to be probably red or whatever. But I'm looking forward to them. Because like I said, I've never painted any Tyranids before, so I was very excited to do this. I just have had all these other projects that have hopped in the way. And after I got through the rats, and then the Nurgle dudes, and now I'm getting done with the spooky boys, and next it'll be the bug people, and then after that, I don't know. Then after that, it might be maybe my one of my first Zona Alpha warbands all finished up. I might paint them, or it might be the little tiny Adeptus Mechanicus, which is also another kill team that I'm working on as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it because my main plan, and I think that for most of you this should also be a plan if you can, is, and I mentioned this on the Friday videos, is get stuff done now, and then when we can finally start playing again and going out and doing things and things like that, you'll have just a bunch of painted armies and just be able to just go ham and show up to games with painted stuff and be like, bam, check that out, and then people are like, whoa. I'm assuming that's what they'll do. That's I think that's really the way to sort of polish this turd that is 2020 right now, is that we hopefully at least can get, a bunch of stuff painted and ready to go. Apparently, Brian Ansel originally intended it to be pronounced Zoat, but even everyone at GW ignored him and pronounced it Zote. Oh, well, that's a bummer. Any tips for dealing with rattle can priming in an apartment balcony in an unfortunate windy weather? Get something sort of big delivered from Amazon, and then keep the box. So, like, if you've got a good-sized cardboard box, even if it's only, I don't know, a couple feet across by a foot high or whatever like that, maybe, I don't know, a foot deep or 10 inches deep, just setting that, like, on its side, and then setting your models in there and spraying in there, it'll keep it out of the wind, so the spray will go where you want it to go, and also it will cause it to not accidentally spray paint your balcony, you know what I mean, like the railing or whatever, all that kind of junk. So that's something to look at as well. But yeah, using spray paint, airbrushing is not a bad idea either, but if you're going to be priming with a rattle can, doing it in a big box is a good idea. And like I said, if you order stuff from GW, if you order stuff from Amazon or one of those places, they will probably send it in a box that's far too large. Like we got a huge box a couple days ago. It was easily 5 feet tall and probably, I don't know, 3 feet wide and about, 10 inches deep. And this giant box shows up on our front porch, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And I open it up, and it was this thing for getting spider webs off the ceiling, and it's just tall, but it's only like this, like it's a pole, and the head on it is like this big, but they just put it in a giant box. I mean, I'm assuming they don't have a skinny box they could have put it in, but it just was rattling around inside this humongous box because it was the height was the main problem. Anyway, there's that. So, like I said, if you order something from Amazon, they'll probably send it too big of a box. Hold on to that box and then use it as your priming box. I can't for the life of me figure out why GW have picked now to introduce free models that you can only get in store. Seems a bizarre time to start that kind of promotion. Well, the thing is that, like any bigger company, they plan this stuff out sort of years in advance to some degree. Like all the stuff for 9th is got at least probably 2 years, maybe a year, but probably closer to 2 years, especially the designs for the actual like models. Any new models that come out next weekend were initially started design at least 2 years ago, if not longer. So, like I was thinking at one point early on in the summer when it was starting to come out that, 9th edition was going to drop in July, let's say the late spring, I was thinking, I don't know if now is the time to drop a new edition of 40K during a pandemic. But, like, all that stuff was produced a long time ago and all that kind of stuff. And so, to some degree, their hands are a little tied because they could have just sat on it. I guess they could have kept everything in a warehouse for a year until next year and then dropped 9th edition. But there's like a lot of tax penalties to that. There's a lot of like just the warehouse space alone. Like you lose a whole bunch of money doing that kind of stuff. To be fair, Indominus sold real well. You know what I mean? They're doing okay. It seems as if currently they're in a point where right now they're having some supply chain issues. Maybe they're actually doing a little too well, and they're having a hard time getting stuff shifted around because it's just hard getting stuff shipped currently in this pandemic. But yeah, it's difficult for them. When you get to be that big, it's very difficult to become agile. It's very difficult to be like, nope, we're going to completely change our minds and do this, and it'll take 3 weeks to change over, and it'll be great. So yeah, a lot of those models that they're going to be given out at these shops, now's not the great time to be doing it. I will agree. But, you kind of have to play the cards you've been dealt. And I suspect that it's also, like I was talking about before, about like Xbox and Sony, and them kind of being put behind the 8 ball to be trying to... Those consoles, the new consoles, have been planned for the last 4 years, easy. So they had to kind of come out now. I just think that marketing in some situations, especially in these uncertain times that we keep hearing about on commercials on TV, I think that some of these companies need to be able to manage expectations a bit better. I think that Sony, Microsoft, they need to become very vocal about you need to chill. Like this is it'll be fine. You'll live, but understand we're gonna have some supply issues. We're gonna all that kind of stuff. So, the only thing is I think that sometimes when you don't talk about that stuff and say that stuff, then, it's just like with Nintendo. When Nintendo comes out with a new game system and people wait in long, long lines at Target to get it and all this kind of stuff, that becomes news, which is free marketing. And all of a sudden your grandmother likes, oh, did you hear about that new Nintendo? Yeah. I don't know. This is why I'm not a business person, frankly. Agoros Dunes is pretty subtle compared to other contrast paints. That's kind of why I like it. I use it a lot in a lot of different situations. Yeah, and it is much more transparent than many of the other ones. I was just wondering if I want to use that instead of using a wash because it's a little bit more... It's not quite as transparent as a wash. But I do love to use washes. Lord knows. Let's see here. I use Amazon box cardboard all the time to prevent spray from my airbrush or rattle cans from coating everything else in my garage. Yep, that's the way to go, man. Absolutely. I actually already had a mini fall off my poster tack and almost take a skydiving plunge off the balcony. Well, that's not good. You don't want that. If you put little tiny parachutes on them, and then it's kind of fun, but it's hard to spray paint them then when they have parachutes on. Any tips for rattle can priming during the winter? Talking 0 Fahrenheit. I don't. Frankly, I don't, generally. And I know that there are people online who are like, oh yeah, no, it's fine, it's fine.
But what they're usually doing, and there's nothing wrong with this, but it's up to you. They're usually heating the cans. And don't ever put the can in the microwave. That's a horrible idea. Don't ever do that. Don't. But if you had like a bowl of warm water, and you set the can in the bowl of warm water and let it warm up that way, and you take it outside, spray, come in the house, so you're fine. That being said, I don't like to bring the stuff that I've sprayed into the house right away. I keep it in the garage so it can outgas, and all the propellant stink and whatever can go elsewhere. And I let it do that usually at least overnight, and then bring the models in the house and maybe work on them or whatever. But I think that if you spray that stuff on there, even with a nice warm can of spray paint, and you spray the primer on there, and then you leave it outside because you don't want the stink, then it's going to be weird. Like, 'cause it's going to take longer to dry. When it's cold, paint takes longer to dry. I don't know why. There's physics involved, I'm assuming. But anyway, so that's an issue. So if you're okay with like spraying outside and then bringing everything in the house, both the models and the rattle cans, cool. I just don't like the stink in the house, so I don't generally rattle can during the winter. One of the reasons I bought an airbrush is because I wanted to be able to prime in the winter, so I prime with my rattle can, with my airbrush. That being also said, I generally prefer to prime terrain with a rattle can. So I generally it was a really lovely week of weather, like last week or the week before. I did a bunch of priming because I'm like, this is the last week we're going to have nice weather. And I came out and I did a bunch of priming and it was great. And so I will be able to take that stuff and paint that terrain over the winter. But when it comes to models, I can prime them with an airbrush in the middle of a blizzard because I'm doing it in the basement and it's fine. So that's another reason to get an airbrush if you're thinking about it, just to being able to prime in the rain, prime in the winter, snow, whatever you want, it's fine. But yeah, you can rattle can out in outside in the winter, but you generally end up need to bring both the paint back in and also the model, and then that's when you get stinky stuff. I just don't like it. If you're fine with the smell, or if you've got like a closet with a fan in it, I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe you do. But yeah, there you go. You can leave it outside and the paint will dry even in cold weather. It just takes a long time. Yeah, and then I'm concerned about the surface. That's the reason. It's not just the time. It's also the longer the paint sits and takes longer to dry. I have seen the surface sometimes get like, and it depends on the paint probably to some degree, but I've seen it almost like not quite an orange. That's not a word. Not quite an orange peel kind of consistency, but that's sort of like pitted kind of bumpiness, I've seen that happen online. I've seen pictures of people who were like, I sprayed outside and left it out in the garage and it was really cold and now it looks like this. And I've seen that happen. So there's that, yeah. Put it in a tote with a lid on it and a little container of silica. Yeah, I mean, the smell is still going to be inside that tote then, but I ordered an airbrush and its related components recently. Everything has arrived on Thursday. However, the seller sent the wrong compressor. So that was my weekend bust. Well, that's a bummer. Hopefully they'll get you a new one. My question was going to be, I've heard that the base size has changed in the last few years. Does that mean the older minis are out as far as games go? No. If you play competitively, like at tournaments and stuff like that, there may be some tournaments that are like, these models have to be on this size base, but I think it's relatively rare. What they mainly did was that like Space Marines, not just Space Marines, but Space Marines, Necrons, a bunch of different like regular troops stopped being on 25 millimeter bases and are now on 32 millimeter bases, so they're a little bit larger, which in some situations works great. I don't think it works great with, let's say, Imperial Guard, but I don't think they do it with Imperial Guard. Like normal Cadians and stuff like that are still, I think, on 25s. But like Space Marines are now on 32s, especially for Primaris, which makes sense because they're just larger. Necrons are now, like Necron Warriors are now on 32s, which is great because in the old days, the Necron Warriors would be, because they kind of had this sort of man-spreading stance to them. Like sometimes, I swear to God, the Necrons would be literally, you'd just be gluing their heels to the outside of the 25 millimeter. Like they would just be standing so widespread, kind of bow-legged, that they would barely be able to fit onto the base, and just at the backs of their feet, their heels would be all you would glue, and their toes would be hanging over the edge of the yeah. So now they're 32s, and well, they're all new sculpts anyway, so it's fine. But yeah, that's not too bad. It works out quite well. Couldn't rattle can last weekend when I needed to. Tropical storm made it difficult. Yeah, tropical storms will do that too. You don't want too much humidity because they'll make your paint all squirrely. Jonathan says cold will wrinkle paint. Yeah, like I said, they kind of like that orange peel kind of looky sort of thing too. So there's that. Would a kitchen's extractor fan be a good place to dry sprayed models? Maybe. You know, like if you closed off your kitchen and you had like a I mean, yeah, maybe it might work. I've not tried that, but that's a possibility. What is it with all these people living in places so cold you can't be outside? Well, yes, some of us do live in places where the weather will kill us. But that happens. Is there a list of which models need to be on what size bases? I don't know if there's an official list. There might be, but I don't know. I would check on Google, and it might. I don't know. But like they just generally now, if you buy newer models, they just give you the right size. But I don't think there's any specific like, oh well, we're gonna throw you out of this tournament if you put your Space Marines on 25s. I could be wrong on that. I mean, they won't throw you out. They might be say, hey, these are not, you know. But the reason for that is partially like because if you're on 25s, you can fit so many more models, like more into hand to hand because the bases are smaller, so you can fit more models within a certain distance of a model that you're trying to attack. So that's one thing. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But you could look. There might be somewhere there might be a chart or something, a PDF that somebody produced. I don't know. Terminators look way better on 40s instead of the old 25s. That's also true. But Terminators also got a lot bigger. Like the original Terminators were really tiny in comparison. So yeah. I wish they had 32mm bases back when I started 40K. Those old metal models on the 25s were always way too tippy. Yeah, I could see that. So Terminators are on 40s? They're either on 40s or 32s. I don't remember exactly. I haven't built a Terminator in a long time. I bought a dirt cheap portable airbrush for priming. Any tips to prevent clogging? Keep it wet all the time. Both my airbrushes right now are downstairs in the basement in my weird little airbrush room, underneath the stairs, a little Harry Potter room, and they're both in fluid. I use them. I take them out of the fluid. I dry them off, put them all together, blah blah blah, paint, spray, do my work, whatever. Clean them out a little bit, throw them back into a little thing of water. It's actually I keep them in I have an ultrasonic cleaner, so I keep them right now. They're floating, well, they're not floating because they're metal, but they're in the ultrasonic cleaner and they just stay wet all the time. They don't rust because they're made out of brass or whatever. But yeah, if the paintbrush never gets dry, it can't clog. Just the way it works. I've never had a clog. I've had one of those brushes I've had for at least 8 years, maybe more, and it's just never had a clog. Let's see. I didn't notice the larger bases with Indominus. Didn't really check. Yeah, there were 32mm bases on the regular size Necron warriors and stuff like that. So yeah. Pretty sure once a time there was a PDF for base sizes of Age of Sigmar when they transitioned from Fantasy Battles to Age of Sigmar. That could be too, yeah. 40K is not picky for base size. AOS Fantasy is picky. AOS and Fantasy, well, specifically AOS, the reason I think that they're more picky is because that game is so much more about very specific placement that having them on the right size bases is important, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, with 40K, it's not as quite as much because there's not as much hand-to-hand combat as there is, say, like an Age of Sigmar to some degree. I live in California. We're hitting the high 30s at night where I'm at. Do not envy all you guys in the below freezing areas, but it feels like that to us wimps anyway. Well, sure. I mean, like, when you're, like when spring comes, and if we get like an unnaturally warm spring, it'll be like 60 and everybody will be like, ugh, it's kind of too hot. But then in the middle of summer here, you're like 60 is kind of chilly. You know what I mean? So you get used to certain temperatures and things like that. We like to say that you're in the winter your blood thickens up, which I'm pretty sure is not true. That sounds dangerous if your blood's too thick. But you get used to it being colder, and then when the summer comes or the spring comes, if it gets too warm too quickly, then you're just like, ugh, it's kind of hot. But if it's not, then you're fine. So I don't know. It's Yeah, I mean, there are times when it gets really cold here. I don't know. It hasn't been for a while, but there have been years, if you take into consideration, say, wind chill, where in a single calendar year, the temperature will swing 175 degrees, which is to say, there will be a day or two in the summer where it gets up into 100, and there will be a day or two in the winter when, with the wind chill, it gets to negative 75. So that's pretty swingy. But, you know, lately it's not been, like, we haven't had 100 temperature in the summer here for, we've had maybe some low 90s last year, but it's been a while since we've had 100. And that really super crazy cold has been a while too. So thankfully, again, knock on wood. Do you use lubricant on your airbrush? Just on the trigger part, not on the needle at all. I haven't ever found a use for it on the needle, frankly. But the trigger I do, like the trigger that goes down, that you press, and it's a 2-stage trigger, so you press down and pull back. So the press down is for air and pull back is for paint. I have found that when you let it go, it'll stop spraying paint, but if you don't have enough lubricant in there because it's a bit older, it will not come all the way back up, so it'll still be blowing air. So I have to put a little bit of stuff in there, and it's stuff that came with it in a little tiny tube that I've not used that much of over the last 8 years, that I still have plenty. But yeah, you just put some of that stuff on the trigger before you put it back in there, and it works pretty well. Hey Dana, how you doing? Good to see you in here. Let's see here. Finished my first Gene Stealer kill team. Did a Kraken Hive color with corn red scythes. Nice. You know, I was wondering about red. Here, these guys. So like I said, they're going to be, this kind of normal body color, but I'm going to throw some either wash or contrast on them, and then makeup brush, dry brush to lighten them up, and then the bony bits on their backs and stuff like that. I'm going to use the Turbo Dork color and all that kind of cool stuff. But with the scything talons, I was wondering if I was going to use that same color or if I want to use a different color. And if I did think about red. Maybe a burgundy red with some nice gloss on it. Not burgundy, because I don't like burgundy. It's got too much purple in it. Like a burnt red as opposed to a burgundy. I'm very particular about burgundy. I don't like it. Anyway, but yeah, I've been thinking about that as well and trying to figure that out. But like I said, I'll be working on these guys possibly as soon as this upcoming Friday. Is when I'll probably start working on them on Twitch. If you're into Twitch, then again, I'm working on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Central and Fridays at 10 a.m. Central. And I go for 3 hours when I go, and it's fun. Hey, Zambies, how you doing? Speaking of Twitch, glad to see Zambies here as well. We had a warm summer here in Sacramento, lots of 100-degree days. Now it's like 40, and I feel like I'm freezing to death. Yeah, I can understand that, especially if it happens quickly. That's always problematic as well. Let's see here. Is there a particular brand of airbrush that you would recommend to beginners? I don't know. I mean, I have my main airbrush is a Iwata HPCS, otherwise known as an Eclipse, I guess. And I like that brush a lot. It wasn't cheap. Frankly, if you're interested in getting into airbrushing, if you're thinking about it, you're not sure if it's the thing, I would actually tell you, and some people will tell you differently, so they have their opinions, I've got mine. I would tell you to cheap out a little bit, frankly. And go on to maybe go online, I'm not saying Amazon, but someplace, or if your local shop's got a good deal, you can sometimes find airbrush and compressor kits together that are $80 to $100. It's the whole shoot and match, the hose and everything you need. And then if you do it and you find out, I really don't like this, actually I want to start doing a completely different hobby. I want to take up the piano. I want to get into paintball. I want to start doing RC drone racing. Whatever it is you decide to do instead, then you didn't spend $500 on a fancy airbrush and fancy compressor. But if you find that, I do really like this is quite good, then you could upgrade your brush, or you could upgrade your compressor, or you could eventually upgrade both without having to spend a whole bunch of extra money. You know what I mean? Rather than, there's a lot of people out there in the world who will tell you, always buy the absolute best that you can afford. And I don't know that that's necessarily the truth. If it was your job, yes. But I will go buy cheap tools from Menards or Hobby or Harbor Freight. I'll go buy a $28 drill because I know I'm going to use it 4 times a year. But if I was trying to do that as a job, then you want to buy a better drill. But if it's a hobby, it's something you don't use all the time, and you may not even enjoy this hobby in 6 months to a year, don't go and drop a whole bunch of money right off the bat. Buy something inexpensive, start getting used to it, because then you will also start to discover, oh, I kind of prefer an airbrush that does this, because some of them have really tiny little cups on the top, some of them have the big cups on the top. You do want the cup on the top kind of airbrush. You don't want the big bottle on the bottom. Those are called siphon feed. You want gravity feed, where it's the cup on the top. That's the only big difference. Don't get the kind with the bottle on the bottom, because they need a lot more paint in them to work properly, and they also need to have a lot higher air pressure to work properly. Those are designed for people who either do car detailing, or like you see them like in the mall and they're doing t-shirts. They've got a dozen or 24 different bottles that each have a different color, and they can just pop one off, pop a new one on, spray out the excess, and now they're doing blue. And that's the benefit. But for us doing hobbies, you want the gravity feed because you can have a lower PSI. I did a bunch of videos about it. There's a playlist on the channel. You can check it out there. So it's not a bad way to go. Michael says, I got an Iwata Neo starter kit for $100. So did it come with a compressor too, or was it just the brush? Because even the Neo is inexpensive, sort of, but it's still I think mine cost $80 when I bought my Neo. But yeah. Got my compressor with tank and cheap airbrush from Amazon. It's great for priming and base coating. That's something to understand too, is that my first airbrush compressor actually came from the hardware store, and it was not an airbrush compressor. It was like a bright red, like pancake style compressor with a 2-gallon tank. And you just have to get the little adjustments, the little adapters that you can make it so it will work with your airbrush hose, and it works just great for airbrushing. It's loud. It's much loud. Airbrush compressors, one of the big things about airbrush compressors is they're quiet. The compressors you use to like blow up your tires or to run your nail gun out in the garage, those are really loud because they don't need to be quiet. But that compressor cost $60, I think, at the hardware store. It only lasted a couple of years, and then it died, and then I just bought a regular airbrush compressor by that point because I knew I wanted to keep airbrushing. So something to look at there too. It doesn't have to be an airbrush compressor. You want to buy an airbrush, but you could use a regular hardware store compressor. Just understand it won't be quiet. Torch says, I still use my Badger Patriot. I only use it for primer and base coating, and it's perfect for that. Yeah, that's the thing too. Hey Rainer, how you doing? Airbrush compressors are cheap. Listen to Uncle Adam if you are new to airbrushing. Get something cheap to see if you like it. Yeah, no, that's I understand that too. Hey, Gaddis Gaming, how you doing? Good to see you as well. You also want the double action trigger. That's also true. So like I was talking before, a double action airbrush means that when you press down, that's air, and when you pull back, that's paint. That allows you to, like, I use it all the time for like I've sprayed a bunch and now I can see it's kind of wet on the surface a little bit, and I just press down just to give it more air and not paint, just to help dry things a little bit quicker. That's one use. But also just having the ability to know that I'm giving it full beans and all the paint versus, no, I'm just going to put a little bit of paint. That's also nice too. So I bought my airbrush 20 years ago, just used it for the first time this year. It's a Badger. Well, that's better late than never, I say. Got my airbrush compressor at Harbor Freight. It's awesome. Our Harbor Freight closed. That was a bummer. I mean, we still have a Menards, which is generally you can get inexpensive tools there too. Again, if you don't use them that frequently, they work just fine. If you decided I'm going to become a carpenter and work on wood every day, then you should buy better tools because otherwise they will break on you all the time. But if you're like, hey, I have a belt sander that I use very infrequently. It's, not too bad. Let's see here. Hey, Blake, how you doing? I live on a pirate ship. Any ideas on how to use my airbrush on the high seas? I think you have to get a parrot, and you sort of step on the parrot slowly, and then the air comes out. You have to put the hose in the parrot's mouth. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. What vibrating cleaner do you have? I don't even know what brand. It's a funny name, though. Magnasonic? Something like that. It's if you just look for ultrasonic cleaner on Amazon. I would tell you not to spend over $30, and that will work just fine. That's the one I've been using for a long, long time. Not too cheap, though. I bought it on the cheapest option, and it literally broke on first use. That's true. Like, if you buy a $4 airbrush, that might, that's plastic or something like that. But, yeah, I mean, even a $20 airbrush probably. Like, I bought a kit on Amazon a number of years back just for testing and stuff like that I think cost $80 or $90, and it was a compressor and an airbrush. And it worked fine, but I never, like, really went to town on it. You know what I mean? But it was probably it was a pretty great starting off set. You know what I mean? So I got a Badger Patriot recently to replace my cheap Chinese airbrush that I got as a pack-in with my compressor, and honestly, it's worse in almost every way, and it makes me sad. Nice for priming, though. Well, it's good for priming then, I guess. I don't think I own. Well, no, I've never used a Badger brush. I think I've always been Iwata, as it turns out. Let's see here. I use my airbrush with my garage compressor, but since that is where I have airlines set up, it works better, and I can drop the pressure at each drop. Oh, that's a good idea. That makes sense, yeah. I do have a siphon airbrush for terrain. Yeah, if you were going to do like a lot of terrain, like let's say we're going to prime a whole bunch of terrain and you've got a relatively widespread needle and all that kind of stuff, I could see that. Yeah, that makes sense. The Appleton Harbor Freight is still open, right? Might be. It could be. Yeah. I guess I haven't looked, to be honest. I got the Neo with a cheap master airbrush compressor. It seems to work well. Yeah, no, I like the Neo. I like it a bunch. Oh my goodness, it's 11. I did not even realize. I was just yammering on here. So, again, I want to thank people for coming by. If you're interested in seeing how these spiny little bug boys get some paint on them, some work on them, like I said, I'll be doing them on Twitch. Like, not tomorrow, although I am streaming tomorrow from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Central Time. I'll be working on the, what do you call them, the Night Haunts. Spooky Boys will be getting finished up. Probably Friday, 10 a.m. I will be starting on the Necrons. And then I'll also be doing a special stream on Saturday where I will be working with the folks from Board Game Geek. And I'll be painting some Marvel chibis. We'll see how that turns out. I've never done chibis before. And that'll be great. But yeah, so I hope to see some of you over there on Twitch if you get the chance. And I hope to see some of you in the next couple of weeks here on the Every Other Sunday show. And I hope that you are doing well and staying busy, painting some models, staying safe, staying healthy. And that's pretty much about it. Thanks for watching.